Today's lesson is segments. We're in day 1, so we're going to pre-teach some vocabulary here. Okay, the vocabulary we're going to talk about today are postulate, which is also referred to as an axiom, versus a theorem, a ruler postulate, segment addition postulate, the distance formula, Pythagorean theorem, algebra versus geometry, and congruent segments. And if you're printing these out, you're flipping it on the short side, and the vocabularies are on the reverse side as the inside. All right, so let's start out with what is our learning objective? I can explain the difference between a postulate, or also called an axiom, and a theorem by using a real-world example and a math example. I can find the distance of a segment by subtracting, and I can communicate geometry and algebra concepts by using the correct representations. So let's start out. Where are you on the learning spectrum? Is this the first time you heard some of this? That's a novice, or I understand this and I've already had this in my previous math courses and I'm an expert. Okay, so let's start out with a postulate or an axiom is a rule accepted without proof. So I don't need any proof. For instance, I could say, this is the color blue. Boy, that's really hard to see. Let me do that better. This is the color blue. That would be a postulate or an axiom, that if we all agree when we point to this color, it's blue, because I don't really have any proof. A theorem, on the other hand, is a rule that can be proved. For instance, are you tardy? When you're at school and the bell rang and you're not in the classroom, if you are not there, you're considered tardy. So I have proof. I know what time it is and the bell rang. Okay? Okay, so let's start out with the ruler postulate. Okay, here's my ruler postulate. So the ruler postulate says the points on a line can be put in a one-to-one correspondence with the real numbers. And the distance between point A and B, written as the distance of A to B, is the absolute value of the difference of the coordinates of A and B. So difference means I'm going to subtract. So this means I'm subtracting. So in geometry, I'm going to call the points A and B, but on the number line, I would call them x1 and y1, and they're called coordinates. So to find the distance between points A and B, I take the absolute value, and I'm going to say the second coordinate minus the first coordinate. Okay? So that is going to tell me the distance between these 2 points. So points are letters. Coordinates are numbers. Okay, my next postulate is the segment addition postulate. That's related to this. So this is the segment addition postulate. So this says if I have a point B that is between points A and C, then the distance from A to B plus the distance from B to C equals the distance from A to C. Now, when I'm talking about distance, I don't have a symbol that goes on top. So if A to B plus B to C equals A to C, then B is between A and C. So I have three different equations that I can write. So I have two parts and the whole thing. So I could say, if I put numbers in here, I could say 2 plus 3 equals 5. Or I could write this as a 5 minus 2 equals 3. Or I could write it as another subtraction sentence, 5 minus 3 equals 2. So I have the same process with my segments. So I'm going to say my part plus my part equals my whole. So this is going to be AB plus BC equals AC. So my whole is from A to C. So I could say the whole A to C minus A to B equals B to C. Or I could start out with the whole and subtract the other part, B to C, and that equals the first part, A to B. Okay, my next topic to talk about is the distance formula and the Pythagorean theorem. The distance formula we usually use when it's on the coordinate plane. And the Pythagorean theorem is for right triangles. So D, the distance between 2 points here, is equal to C when I'm talking about the Pythagorean theorem, which is the hypotenuse here. So in Algebra 1, you should have talked about the distance formula. So the distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 quantity squared plus y2 minus y1 quantity squared. In the US, the Pythagorean theorem is heavily used in 8th grade. So just reviewing it, it is going to be the leg squared plus the other leg squared equals the hypotenuse squared. So we're going to be using this a lot this year. Okay, so let's talk about some differences when we're talking about geometry versus algebra. Okay, so in geometry, we're talking about shapes, segments, triangles, polygons. So when I'm saying they're the same, I say congruent, and I use this symbol. When they're the same in algebra, I use an equal sign. So if I want to say segment AB is congruent to CD, in algebra, I would say equals to, and I read, so when I'm saying equal to, I'm not rounding, it's an exact value. If I'm rounding, then I use this symbol. So I have three different symbols: congruent, equals, and approximately. So I have three different symbols that I am talking about. Okay, so if I want to talk about congruent segments, I can say in geometry, the segments are congruent. And the way I would write that is I would say segment AB. So I'm naming my 2 points with capital letters. I have my segment symbol, and I'm going to say it's congruent congruent to segment CD. If I want to say the lengths are equal, I'm talking about distance. So I would say AB equals CD. So this is, the left one is geometry, the right one is algebra. So segments or line segments that have the same length are called congruent segments. So this is distance. Okay, that's the end of the lesson.